Welcome and hello. This is a video exercise in HEC ResSim, and in this exercise, I'm going to be introducing if blocks. If blocks are a way to further customize when specific reservoir release rules are invoked. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. We have ResSim up on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm in the watershed setup module here at the top drop down, and then select File, New Watershed. Give the watershed a name, and then select the directory you want it to save to. Then select the units and the time zone. Apply, OK. The watershed has been created. Now let's go ahead and sketch out a stream alignment by clicking the stream alignment tool, hold down Control, and then click on the upstream most end of the stream alignment. Continue holding down Control, and then let go of Control before your last click. Give the stream a name. Click the computation point tool, hold down Control. Give your computation point a name. Click the reservoir tool, hold down Control, single left click on the upstream end of the reservoir pool, and then let go of Control, and then click again. I'll call this reservoir 1. And let's add one computation point at the downstream end, hold down Control. All right, CP4. Next, I'm going to go to Watershed Configuration Editor, and then click Configuration New, and then Config 1 will be the name of my configuration. Okay, apply. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go File, Save Watershed. Next, I'm going to select the Reservoir Network module. Let me create a network here. So Network, New. I'll just give it a generic name called Network 1. I'm only going to have one network in this exercise. So we'll also select Config 1 for the configuration, or whatever you named your configuration. And we are good. We have our reservoir. I'm going to go ahead and connect this network here by clicking the Reach tool, hold down Control, single left click on the upstream junction, let go of Control, and then click the downstream junction. I'll just click OK, and do the same thing for the downstream reach, and OK. All right, so what I want to do in this exercise is introduce some inflow into the reservoir up here at CP1, which is the upstream junction, and then it's going to flow into the reservoir. We're going to have some rules, and then we're going to use if blocks to modify when specific rules get used. All right, so let's keep moving forward here. I'm going to add some inflow to this upstream junction. So edit junction properties, inflow. I'm going to name that inflow at CP1, factor of 1. Make sure to enter it on the top row here. If you go to, I think, the second row or below, it might get messed up. So just heads up there, and then apply. OK. Now that there's inflow, there is a little blue circle around that junction as opposed to other junctions. Next up, let's go ahead and let's define the inflow right now. And then after that, we can visit the reservoir and make edits there. Okay, I'm going to go Tools, HEC DSS View. And then I'm going to create a new .dss file. I'll call it data.dss. Okay, it's been created. Here it is. Now I want to do a time series data set. I'm going to create one by going data entry, manual time series. I'm just going to type in some generic terms here for the path name parts, project, location, inflow, custom 1. Sure. Okay, so for this simulation, I'm going to use the month of April 2024 with a 1 hour time step. I'll just say April 2024. The first hour of the month is 100 hours, and then the units will be CFS. All right. Down here is where I'll enter the data, the actual inflow values. Okay, so I'm pasting in the values from Excel. Okay, there we go. So there are 1 month worth of data. And let me just go ahead and save it and then display what the graph looks like so you guys can get an idea of what we're dealing with here. So I'm going to select it and then click this little graph tool here. Here is the plot of the inflow. So it starts at about 500 CFS, it increases to about 2,000, it goes back down, and then it peaks up at around 12,000 CFS and then goes back down. So sort of a wild inflow, but it'll be good for what we're doing in this exercise. I want to create one more time series data set, and this one's a little bit different. I'm going to still go manual time series. Actually, you know what? It'll be easier if I just duplicate this one because there's a lot of overlap. Duplicate. What I'm going to change here is it's not going to be inflow. It's going to be called big storm warning. Yeah, sure. I guess big storm warning again. Okay. All right. So for this record, I want to right click, edit. And then what I want to do, it's not CFS, it's going to be binary. And so that changes there. And then these values, okay, so I'm pasting in some numbers here. They're either 0 or 1. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. We will return to what this means later. I'll show you the plot later. All right, return to data entry screen. Don't need that. All right, so we have our two data sets saved here and ready for later. Let's go to the reservoir editor tool. I'm going to right click, edit reservoir properties. All right, so this is my claim to fame here. I'm going to call the dam. And then let's start editing the reservoir. I'm going to click on pool. This is where we edit the reservoir geometry. And I'm just going to paste in some numbers from Excel. So you can pause the video if you want to use my numbers. All right, so I'm going to click on dam next, and then 1500 and 800 will be our top elevation at the top of dam and length of dam in feet. Then I'm going to add a controlled outlet. And these are the values for the max capacity of that controlled outlet for the different water surface elevations in the reservoir pool. Also, I'm going to say there are 4 gates instead of just 1 to increase the max capacity total. All right, so I'll go ahead and click apply. Then over on the operations tab, I'm going to go operations, new, and then create an operations set. This is required for an alternative, so I'll click OK. And then these are my 3 default zones. I'll go with these. And I'm just going to set a constant top of zone elevation for the entire year. So kind of boring, but this isn't what the exercise is about. I'll just type in 1500, apply, 1480, apply, and then the inactive zone will be 1350 and apply. Okay, so these are our zones, the cross section, my elevation. And what I'm going to do first is create an alternative, run a simulation with no rules whatsoever. We'll just see how the reservoir handles that inflow, and then we'll come back, add some rules, and then of course add some if blocks, which is the purpose of this video. All right, so let's click OK. Click OK there. I'm going to go alternative, edit, then alternative, new, alt 1. Okay. Now for a time step, I'll do 1 hour. Leave all the other settings the same. In operations, this is where I specify the operation set. Looks good. The look back values we're going to start at 1480. That's our guide curve elevation. And we will start at a flow of 500 CFS because that's what the inflow is for the first few days before things get wild. All right, the last tab we need to deal with here is to assign the time series to our CP1 inflow. So I'm going to select that value here. It's in data.dss, and then here is the inflow time series that we created. All right, so that's been assigned. So I'm going to go up to alternative, save. Okay, and then we can close that. Now let's save the network. Might as well save the watershed. And then let's head over to the simulation module. Select that, and then simulation new. We need to add that simulation. Simulation 1 is what I'll call it. This is for the month of April. So I'll say April 2024. We'll start the simulation at noon on the first day of April. And then the look back period will start at the very first hour of the month. And the simulation will go until the last day of the month. So I'll type in a 30, and then we'll end it at noon on the last day of the month. I'm going to select the checkbox for the alternative and then click OK. And then here we go. Our simulation appears to be ready to run. So we will click the compute button here, and it ran. I'm going to right click on the reservoir and then click plot. What I'm seeing here in the plot is interesting. The top plot is the water surface elevation, and it starts at the 1480 guide curve elevation. And then once that big peak in the inflow hits, it can no longer maintain that guide curve elevation. In fact, it overtops the top of the reservoir over 1,500 feet here. So we definitely want to avoid this situation. The bottom plot shows the flow. So again, we have the inflow shown here. And then in this green line, we have the release from the reservoir. All right, so what I want to do first is create some min and max rules without any if blocks, and then I'm going to use if blocks to modify min and max release rules. All right, so let's go ahead and create a trial from that alternative one. I'm going to first call this basic rules. Okay. Then I'm going to edit those basic rules, reservoirs, and then click on the operations tab and then right click. We're going to add some rules. I'm going to call this min 1000 CFS. That's just the label. It'll be for the controlled outlet release function. Okay. Minimum. Then it'll be based on date, and I'll just say 1000 CFS. Apply. And then we will add a maximum release rule, and I will say it's max 1000 CF, 1500 CFS, sorry. And then that will be also from the controlled outlet. So let me just do the same thing here. It'll be based on the date, so all year round, and then that is a maximum. Apply. Okay, that's all I need to do here. So let's go ahead and click OK, and then compute, and then close, and let's see what that looks like. Oops, let me only show the results from our most recent trial. Okay, I figured out why it wasn't doing what I expected. So I need to right click on each of these rules and add the rule to all zones. Kind of a rookie mistake there. Add rule to all zones and apply and okay and okay. And then let's compute and see what the results look like. Right click, plot. All right. All right. That's kind of what I expected to see. Let me zoom in on the first few weeks. And we have our inflow shown in the black bold line here, but the minimum release is 1000 CFS. So that's why we are actually releasing more than the inflow, and we're starting to experience a little bit of a deficit here in the water surface elevation. And then once the inflow rises to 2000 CFS, we actually exceed that guide curve water surface elevation of 1480, and that now the maximum release is an active constraint here in the bottom plot of 1500. So you can see what's going on there. Our releases are constrained between 1000 and 1500 during this simulation. Of course, things get crazy once the flows really pick up. But before we do that, let's do a quick easy example for using if blocks. What I want to do is say if it is a Wednesday, then release 2500 CFS. So April 3rd is a Wednesday, April 10th is a Wednesday, the 17th would also be a Wednesday, and so on. Well, I mean, I could just do that using the release rules by saying a specific date, but I also want to add a condition to say if the water surface elevation is above or below the guide curve. So what I want to do here is say a 2000 CFS release if if the water surface is below the guide curve. So I'd expect to see it at 2000 here on the 3rd, but if the water surface elevation is above the guide curve, then it should be 2500 release. All right, let me just start getting to work and you'll see what I'm thinking. I'm going to create a new trial based on my first trial with the rules, so I don't have to repeat that. And I'm going to just call this trial extra Wednesday release. Okay. Then I'll go right click, edit, run, reservoirs. And then the operations tab is where I left off. Now it's time to introduce an if block. So I will right click, add if block. This is going to be called extra Wednesday release. Okay. Well, let me title this one as well. If Wednesday. So I'm going to add a condition and I'm going to come down here and say if the current time step equals day of week Wednesday and apply. So if Wednesday, that's cool. Let me go ahead and append an else. So this will be not Wednesday and apply. And then if it is Wednesday, I need to determine if the current water surface elevation is above or below the guide curve. And instead of the guide curve, let's just make it a little bit less, like 1478. So let me go ahead and do add if block, and then I will say water surface elevation greater than 1478, and then OK. So that condition would be edited here. I click that add condition button. I selected the row, and now I'm going to select time series and then pick a value. This will be a model variable. And then I'm going to select the reservoir pool elevation and then click the select button that pops up right here. Click OK. And now for the operator, it will be at least. And then this is going to be, I could assign it to a time series if I had that saved, but I'm just going to paste in a value here, 1478, apply. Now I need to actually specify a rule there. Let me let me give that a name and then apply. So that updated. Let me make this a little bit wider over here. Okay. Now I need to create a rule. So I will add a new rule. This will be a max rule. So it will be, or no, let's give it a specific flow. I'll just say release is 2500. Okay. So that'll be from the controlled outlet. This will be, I'll just say date, even though it's constrained to a Wednesday under that specific condition. And then specific to 2500, apply. Okay, and then we will have an else statement. So I'll append an else, and I could just say water surface elevation less than 1478 feet, apply. And then I'll create a specific release rule here now, and that'll be release 2000 CFS. And that'll be also from the controlled outlet. That's a specific value based on the date and 2000. Apply. So where are we at here? We have a minimum of 1000 CFS. That's fine. Then we have a maximum of 1500 CFS, which actually needs to be in its own else block because that way we'd still need to check if it's Wednesday first. So I'm going to remove this rule from all zones. Yes. And then I'm going to click on this if block. And if it's not Wednesday, that's when the 1500 max release rule will be invoked. Otherwise, we're going to follow these rules and next look at the water surface elevation. So I'm going to see. Oh, I already have the else right here. Got it. Now I could create the rule, but I already have it. It already exists. So I'm going to come up to rule, use existing, and then max 1500. Okay. And then apply. Great. So I want all of this to apply to the conservation zone as well. I don't want to forget that again. So I'm just going to go up and right click and add if block to all zones. Now we have the exact same copy down here. All right, let's see what happens when I run that. Running the extra Wednesday flow. And then let's right click and check out the plot. Oops, I did that again. Let me just check out the plot for just the trial we ran. And here we go. All right, so it looks like we have some results here. I'm going to zoom in on just like the first 3 Wednesdays of the month. And then also this water surface elevation is interesting. So what I have highlighted here on the bottom is the inflow. And then on the top is the water surface elevation. Now on the bottom, I'm going to highlight the release. So we see Wednesday is the 3rd of the month, the 10th of the month, and the 17th of the month. Now on the 3rd of the month, it's only releasing 2000 CFS because our water surface elevation is below 1478. However, it's releasing 2500 CFS on Wednesday the 10th because that water surface elevation is above 1478. And then the 17th of the month, it looks like it's again only releasing 2000 CFS. So this is a fairly simple and easy to understand example of how if blocks and that control logic can be used in the reservoir editor operations tab for us modelers to better specify when specific rules are invoked based on the day of the week, the model variables, and all the other options available to us in HEC ResSim. Okay, the last thing I want to do here is address the elephant in the room, which is this huge inflow that we're seeing here towards the end of April. I want to use that time series for a big storm warning and start releasing like 4,000 CFS starting as on the 14th or the 15th. I think my time series starts it on the 16th, but we'll check that out. So I'm going to go back and edit um, create a new trial, and then make some edits to the if statements and add a new rule. All right, so new trial. We'll call this big storm warning. Okay. So here is the big storm warning trial. I'm going to edit that trial, click on reservoirs, and then operations tab. And we have a copy of everything we've been working on so far. What I'm going to do is actually remove this entire if block from all zones. Yes, it looks like it's gone. It's not. It's saved. It's part of the reservoir. I can add it back in by going if block and then use existing. And then here it is right here. All right, so but what I want to do is add an if block, and this is going to check whether or not there's a big storm warning. If there is, start releasing a bunch of water. If it's not, then it would just operate basically using the same rules that we saw in the previous trial. All right, so let's see here. Add if block. This is going to be called big storm warning, and then OK. Here's the conditional expression editor, as it's called. I will just call it big storm warning. I'm not exactly sure what the best thing is to use for labels here, but this is just a label. It's not involved in the logic or anything. Let me click add condition. Now I'm going to say time series and then select the time series. It's going to be a no, I'm sorry. It's going to be an external variable. So I select external variable. I'll give it a name. I'll just call it big storm warning time series. And I think I need to use current value. Let's give that a shot. Okay. So apply. So that updates the name. I know I still need to do something. All right. So it's going to, when it's equal to 1, that's when it's true. So I'll show you the actual time series data set in a moment. So it's just a binary 0 or 1 and apply. So let me add an else case as well. Append else. This is where I'm going to include everything from the previous trial, which is, checking if it's Wednesday or not. And if it's not, just kind of basing the maximum there. But what I want to do here is add a rule. This is going to be min. Let's go with 3,800 CFS. Okay, so that'll be from the controlled outlet. It's a minimum. And then based on date, 3,800, and then apply. All right, so the big storm warning is the time series we'll assign in just a moment. So I click on else, and then I'm going to right click up in the if block, use existing. We want to include this extra Wednesday release. Okay. All right. So now we have 3 different if statements. Now we have 3 if statements. The first one is the big storm warning check. And then we also have a if Wednesday check, and then if the water surface elevation check. So it's getting rather involved here. I also want to copy this if block to all the zones. Okay, so there's that. All right, looks good. I'm going to click apply. Okay. One thing I need to do is come over to the alternative editor, and as promised, this big storm time series needs to be assigned. So I'll click on the path, and then let me navigate to the file, which I think I moved over into here. Then let me search big storm warning. Okay, so here it is. Here, I'll show you the plot first. So here's the plot. It looks like it's active from like April 15th through the 23rd, right? So it's either a 0 or a 1. So starting at this date, we're going to start releasing 3,800 CFS. That rule will no longer be active based on the if condition after like April 23rd. All right, so I'm going to click this set path name button, and then that populated into place. All right, alternative save, close that, and then let's compute, and then right click, plot, All right, let me just plot the results here. All right, fantastic. Looks like there wasn't any overtopping. So the water surface elevation did drop a fair amount, down to what looks like 1410, 14 teens. Let me zoom in here a little bit. All right, in the top plot, I have the water surface elevation. Once we started releasing 3,800 CFS on, looks like the beginning of March 16th, then we really released a ton of water. It looks like we couldn't even release that much water once the water surface elevation started dropping, just based on the hydraulic head and the hydraulics of the reservoir. But it released basically everything it could, and that saved us. So now instead of the flow being so much all at once, we were able to anticipate the storm, anticipate that huge inflow based on the rules. Now, it looks a little funky, and I wouldn't say this is my final product, but this is we're working towards a trial that's worth adopting into our main alternative. And I hope that this example here gave you a few ideas about how to use reservoir rules, but also use them with if blocks and else blocks. And I didn't talk about is if else blocks, but as a way to have a little bit more flexibility with the rules and with reservoir operations using HEC ResSim.